Walking into this game, does anybody else feel like this is must win? Or is that just me? Is this the massive elephant in the room that if we lose against Port, we are once again already in strife in season 2025, much like the way 2024 started? That is the big question or doubt that I have in my mind right now. And I'm just praying for the sake of our fan base, for the sake of the players, for the sake of the coaches, that we win this game against Port at the G, the Dan Houston return game. And it's against Port Adelaide, a great side. And admittedly, that game last year at the G on a Saturday afternoon, it could have gone either way in the sense that Port were absolutely pumping us in that first quarter. I think we were down by 5 goals somewhere throughout that second quarter as well. So while we ended up beating them comfortably on another day, that game goes in a different direction. And it's another high speed team. But Port Adelaide really do have a different profile to a team like compared to a team like GWS, not to mention that we're also playing at the G. So it's a completely different, I guess, foundation that the game is built on when you play on a ground like the G. Port are inherently a high kicking percentage side. Whereas Collingwood are sort of middle of the pack. Port also don't dish off a lot of handball receives. Like when a defender receives the ball off the halfback flank, you're not going to see that as much from a side like Port. Whereas GWS are a top four side for that stat. So we're going to see different type of game styles. Port are going to try kick their way to a win, whereas Collingwood, you're going to see a little bit of knocking the ball forward, long kicks, but also a healthy dosage of handball receives off the half back line to get the ball rolling. Looking at some of the training footage, you can see a lot of the drills are built around handball game, moving the ball quickly. So there is definitely, without Craig McRae coming out and saying, hey, we're going to move the ball quickly and be a bit more assertive from our defensive half, without him saying that, you could definitely see that in training this week. So we're looking at, when it comes to these kicking players at Port Adelaide, you're looking at players like Jeremy Finlayson, who's been a revelation down back there. Jason Horne-Francis, he kills you with speed and kicking. We'll talk about him later because a matchup there is going to be needed. And if we do a Finn Callahan job on Jason Horne-Francis, good luck to us. Kane Farrell, Carl Amon off the wing as well. So these are players we definitely need to keep an eye on and don't be submissive with those players. Port, just like Collingwood, are also a quality side going into their forward 50. And just like us, they're not as defensively sound as us either. So for every 2 times they go inside 50, they'll result in a scoring shot. Same like Collingwood, both top four sides. So the question is, who takes their chances in this game? Tie that in with the fact that once again, we're playing against another high pressure side. Number 2 side, Port Adelaide being in tackles, and the number 1 side for tackles inside 50 last year. So who wins the contest in the coalface and who's able to keep the ball in their forward half the longest? So tie all those variables together, and you're probably going to get a fair idea of who wins the game. What I'm glad that we won't see as well is a bunch of, I'm hoping, for goodness sake, that we're not going to concede a bunch of uncontested possessions around the ground and just let teams chip away at us. Port have that potential, but once again, last year they weren't a high uncontested possession side. So the jury's still out on that, but we'll see. They've got some key cogs in different thirds of their field that they'll be missing. Radagolia is to be assessed. Todd Marshall has the Achilles, and then you have Zerk Thatcher as well. So 3. And then if you want to throw in Charlie Dixon, who they're missing, who is retired, Dan Houston's the obvious one. It's a different looking side for Port Adelaide as well. There'll be some adjustments to do with them. And if there's any advantage that Collingwood have in this game, it's the fact that we're already a week into our season. We're we're past the point of cramps, hopefully. We're past the point of just fine-tuning things, or we're in the process, and we got some feedback, so now we can work on that. Port haven't gotten their feedback yet. They haven't experienced the cramps yet. They haven't experienced playing in 28-degree heat like we're going to on Saturday again. So in an official match. So hopefully that is the advantage that opening round actually gives us. Fingers crossed. The matchups, as we mentioned before. So Jason Horne-Francis. Who on earth plays on Jason Horne-Francis? If it's Scott Pendlebury, I will spew up. If I see Pendlebury and Jason Horne-Francis line up at that first centre bounce, you may as well turn off the TV, because you know what type of show you're going to get there. Last year, we were guilty for not being able to tag your Zach Merritts of the world, Jason Horne-Francis. So we bring in Perryman. Am I sold that Perryman is the right matchup for Horne-Francis? No, but is he a better matchup than Pendlebury? Yes. What is my idea of a good matchup for Horne-Francis? There probably isn't such thing as a good matchup for Horne-Francis. He is so ballistic, talented, good with the ball, smart. He's everything you want in a player. But you need to, at the very least, you need to see speed on speed. You need Jack Crisp or Bo McCreary. Crisp and Bo both played in midfield in that fourth quarter against GWS. Let's see that early. Let's go with it early. Show us your nuts while the game is still on a table fly. Put them in there. Give them the Horne-Francis matchup and see what happens, because it's the best that we got. The other one is Connor Rozee. This is what I think is going to happen. I think Nick Dacos and Connor Rozee are going to shake hands at the centre bounce and never see each other for the rest of the game. I think they're going to run their own shows, and we're going to have to live with that. Because by the same token, while you want to match up with players and make sure they don't have the best game that they can possibly have, you also want to focus on your own game and live with Connor Rozee getting 30-1, because Nick Dacos is going to go back the other way, get you 35-2 and 10 score involvements. That's what you're hoping for. The last one is Finlayson, but more specifically, when you look at last week, Lockie Whitfield, Connor Iden, Lockie Ash, how many times they linked up in these sequences off the halfback and conceding those uncontested possessions off the halfback line. You probably want the same thing for Finlayson, Kane Farrell. They got a couple of other players, but you want Schultz, Checkers, Membry. You want the whole forward unit to make sure that this doesn't happen. It was a trend last year. Players that played on a half-back line for other sides that played against Collingwood, we as a team conceded the most possessions to those types of players. So we've got to put a halt to this, and it needs to start on Saturday. It's a must-win. It's a must-win. I'm going to be there, so it'll be interesting to see how the team moves live, being there live. It's one thing to watch them on TV, but I want to see how the team moves defensively, what the synergy is like, the organization. What are we looking? How do we set up behind the ball? All these sorts of things. These are the things that I'm curious about. So, anyhow, how are you feeling going into this game? Let me know in the comment section, and hopefully we get the win on Saturday. Tonight we have Moving the Magnets at 6 p.m. On Friday we'll have another Pies presser, which just talks about all the recent Collingwood news in the media. And then Saturday we'll have a pre-game show. We're looking at probably a 4:30 p.m. start. We'll go for an hour. Me and my brother will go to the game. We'll come back, post-game show, and hopefully we can celebrate a win there. Go Pies.